Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast with your host, Mr. Laz Michaelides here, and on the screen opposite me, Mr. Felipe Amarim. How you doing, bro?
Doing great, brother. How are you?
Good, yeah, very well, thank you, very well. How have things been?
Things have been great, man. Enjoying, my life. Not so close to the city centre anymore, isn't it?
So you're like in the countryside of London now, aren't you?
Exactly. That's the thing. Yeah,
The
life has been
countryside
great,
of
yeah.
London.
Life has been great.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we are back with another album episode. And as you've seen probably from the artwork on this and the title, if you haven't read it, we are doing Band on the Run by Wings, a very, very famous album of the 70s. As usual, I'll just kick you off with a bit of quick info. So the album was released 30th of November, 1973, recorded between August and October 1973 in Nigeria, which we'll get to. It was recorded at the EMI and ARC studios in Lagos and the Kingsway Recorders in London. The genre it's most typically associated with is rock, clocking in at just over 41 minutes. The label was Apple and the producer was Paul McCartney himself. So before we get into it, I've got a quiz for you.
Oh, quiz right away.
Ready?
Oh my God. Yeah.
But I tell you why I want to do the quiz right away is
Good.
because you can sort of talk about things that happened in the quiz later in the episode.
Right.
Right, so let's kick off with the quiz. Question 1. The song Mamounia is named after what?
It's named after the house they stayed in whilst recording the album.
Almost.
Oh, is that it?
It's a hotel
that they were
in Morocco, Marrakesh, in April 1973. So it wasn't during this recording process. It was a few months earlier.
I'm not consulting my notes. That's why I did it properly. I'm not cheating. Right. Do you know what it means, though?
The song Mamounia, no.
No,
the word.
The word, yeah.
No, I don't. What does it mean? Go on, bonus point.
Safe haven.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Question 2. Which famous drummer plays percussion on Picasso's last words?
Ginger Baker.
There you go. Cream's very own Ginger Baker playing percussion in this song. Ian Holm and Trevor Jones do BVs, so backing vocals, on the song No Words. Who were they?
They were the Wings roadies.
Oh, bro, you've done your research today. I'm very impressed.
Yeah.
Okay. After being robbed at knife point during their time in Nigeria, what did Paul and Linda McCartney lose?
Demo tapes and lyrics.
Bloody hell, man, you're doing really well. You smashed this. Okay, this might be the only one that gets you out a little bit.
Well, I failed the first one, though. Come on.
Oh, yeah, fair enough. You've done well on the others.
Yeah.
What was the song Jet named after?
Oh, there's a controversy on this one. It could be a pony.
That's my answer. That's what I've got.
That's the, some people say it was after a dog, but I think it was his daughter's pony.
That's the answer I've got. Yeah, I haven't actually looked into the dog side of it.
That's the most popular version of the story.
But bro, 4 out of 5. I'm impressed. Yeah. Well done. Good one.
I love the album, as you can tell.
Yes, yeah, excellent stuff. Well, bro, actually, funnily enough, though, I'm the one who chose this album because I just knew it was one of those staple solo Beatles albums. That's why I chose it. I thought we should really do one. But yeah, if you love it this much, go on. Get started.
Yeah, well, can we start talking about how the album came about, how the songs came about, and
yeah.
And the one thing I didn't know, actually, to be fair, I didn't even know that was your choice because we decide like quite early in the year or the previous year before we start recording.
So for listeners interested in the process, we basically, Felipe sends me like 20 albums at the start of the year. I pick 20 albums and then randomly just select which ones we do on which days. So
I love this one so much that I'm impressed that I never suggested it before, and I'm impressed as your choice. But yeah, I'm glad you made that choice.
Good.
So the thing is, they had some songs. They were working on songs with the lineup they had as Wings at the time, which is Paul McCartney's band. He formed immediately after, not immediately after, he did a solo album and then Wings after the Beatles. But there were some arguments with the drummer and the guitar player, and they quit the band 2 days before they traveled to Nigeria to record the album.
Can you imagine that?
So yeah,
going to prepare a recording and 2 of your band members quit on you. My God.
Yeah, and the one thing I didn't know about that is, so it was Denny Lane, who's a piano player and guitar player. He used to play with a band called the Moody Blues, and Paul and Linda, just the three of them. That's the lineup that did the whole album, produced, wrote and recorded all the songs. And I'm quite impressed because I didn't know about that the first time I listened to the album. And I was like, wait a minute, so is that Paul playing every single drum track in the album? And it's like, yeah, he's got such a character, musically speaking, as a bassist, guitar player, piano player, singer, and drummer. You would think it's like he hired people to play those instruments as you normally do, and he actually did that just like McCartney, his first solo album. He did all on his own, and he did this kind of the same here with help from Linda and Danny Lane. But the thing is, yeah, I didn't know that. I thought that was a Wings album with the whole lineup.
Yeah,
impressive, isn't it?
It is impressive, and I think, you know, I alluded to it in the quiz there, but they went to Nigeria, and I was reading that they went to Nigeria so that they could have a peaceful time whilst recording the album. He wanted to be on the beaches in the morning and then come back and record in the afternoon. He wanted a nice time of it. But Nigeria, for those who don't know, in 1973, Nigeria had just finished its own civil war, which ended in 1970. So you were left with a militant government, disease, corruption all around the country. Basically, from what I'm reading, Nigeria was not a nice place to be in 1973. But Paul McCartney thought it'd be nice.
He was totally unaware of that. He just knew, like, you know, like based on the geography of the place. Oh, that's going to be a good place. You know,
he just wanted somewhere exotic, just somewhere unusual.
Exactly. Basically, he talked to the label. Was it EMI? The label, Apple, wasn't it?
Oh, Apple was the label. Yeah, the EMI was the studio.
Yeah. So basically, he spoke to them about, you know, can you give me all places in the world where you guys have a studio? I'm going to choose the one that's like nothing to do with England. I want to be in a different place.
Yeah.
They sent him the places, and I said, okay, I'm going to go to Lagos in Nigeria. So that was the decision. He didn't know anything about it. So he got there, like they only had one how do you call it, the tape recorded. Just like they could only do 8 tracks at a time, so that kind of stuff. And and some of the gear was faulty as well. So like it wasn't a great studio. It wasn't a great time in that country at that particular time in history.
No.
And he was totally unaware of that. And then they got robbed.
But for them. And I just found out as well, they took their 3 kids with them as well.
Yes.
What a culture shock that must have been.
Exactly. And the keyboard guitar player as well, he had his family with him. Wow. So they rented some houses around the area, like an hour away from the studio, actually. And they would spend some time with the family and some time in the studio recording.
So you mentioned about the studio, and I'll go straight onto one of the biggest points on the album. Despite everything you said about how crap the studio was, the production of this album is unbelievable.
It's great, isn't it?
It's unbelievable.
Well, they touched it up in Air Studios in London. Yeah. So they did a lot of work, overdubs and other stuff back.
Yeah, but I think you've still got to have.
But the sound of the room and everything else is actually great, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. The arrangements and the instrumentation is a really, really well crafted album. Everything sounds so perfect. I can't get over this 1973. It just has this sound and this professionalism about it. It happens even in the first song, Band on the Run. Within seconds, it's like that. It's so clean. It's do you know what I mean? It's just, it sounds fantastic.
You don't even need to listen to the remastered version of it. No. You can listen to the standard album, the original one. It sounds great. Yeah.
It's one of those again. But yeah, you know, production wise, he did continue, didn't they? That they just continued in this scale, the scaling of trying to make their albums sound better, and them just sounding better in general. Anyway, you want to go? Any topics you want to talk about?
Yeah, this in regards to the production, as we in this topic now. So they finished in London at George Martin's studio. George Martin's, who was the arranger producer for the Beatles. He had a studio. I think it's called Air, or I don't know if it's actually pronounced AIR or it's Air.
Yeah, right. One of them. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the. So he did. So George Martin didn't participate in it. It was just his studio. So they went to London to do some overdubs, and I think Jet was entirely recorded there. So
Yes, it
that
was.
was
You're
the only
right.
song. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I remember reading that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so they did that, and I must, well, I think we must mention the name because I don't have the name. I know you can Google it. The guy who did the orchestral arrangements for the album, it's
Tony Visconti.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That man did such an amazing job because he had 3 days to write and record and conduct the orchestra for that.
3 days.
3 days, and all
Wow.
the orchestral parts in the album are absolutely beautiful.
They are. They're George Martin-esque, aren't they?
Yeah,
And I think it's
exactly.
only
Same
fair we
style.
compare to the Beatles because inevitably we will be comparing Paul McCartney to the Beatles because that's his previous project. But yeah, as you said, Tony Visconti's done an amazing job here. The orchestra makes the album, in my opinion. I think you take away the orchestra and it's not the same album at all.
Yeah, exactly. I think with this, yeah, with this, all those let's say not so pleasant things happening, you would expect the album to be a bit, I don't know, to reflect some sort of tension, some sort of
Yeah,
sadness or
yeah,
fear or whatever. But it's such a beautiful album, such an like an easy album to listen to start to finish.
it
And
is.
most of the songs are cheerful and nice, and the lyrics are nonsensical in a good way. So it's nothing, like, it's nothing dense or political or anything like
Yeah,
that. And I think it's interesting because it's also relaxed, and so like I'm not trying to prove anything, but at that time McCartney kind of had to prove he could do well without the Beatles because the first
yeah.
two Wings
He,
records didn't go that well.
he
The
fell
other
out
ones
of
did.
fate. Yeah, he fell out of favor with audiences and critics because they just
Yeah,
didn't take to his work post the Beatles. Um, Now, so I'm going to ask you a question.
yeah.
And for those listening and watching, Felipe is a massive Beatles fan. I'd also consider myself to be a massive Beatles fan, but I've only recently got into them the last 5 or 6 years. You've loved them most of your life.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, as a Beatle, how do you follow the Beatles music?
I mean, as a yeah, I
What do
would
you
say I
do?
would say there's no way. I mean, if imagine this one day you wake up and you're like, wow, I'm a Beatle, like singular, not a
Yeah,
member of the
yeah,
Beatles.
yeah.
So yeah, how do you do that? I don't think it's possible at all. You got to remember that the loads of great ideas that Paul McCartney wrote about came from the other Beatles, not only from his partnership with John Lennon, but like Ringo Starr is the one who came up with the phrase "Hard Day's Night." He's the one who
Mm,
came up with 8 days a week. So
yeah.
imagine just how would you write those songs without those lines if you don't have a guy as creative and funny as Ringo by your side. So they had this massive influence on Paul's songwriting, to the point that even the song "Band on the Run," years after the Beatles breakup,
Was it?
is based on a line by George Harrison.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know that.
that's
You,
it.
if you want to tell that story, it's an interesting
No, no,
one.
no.
So,
I don't actually remember it. No, go
well,
on. You
basically,
tell it.
basically, at the beginning of the song, "If I ever get out of here," that phrase, when they were like, when the band was, done and dusted, they were just going through the bureaucratic stuff that you need to go through to finish a band. So that's all the financial stuff. So they had a series of really boring business meetings.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
then George Harrison looked at Paul and said, "If I ever get out of here," and that was just that. And so, see, the Beatles they were still influencing Paul McCartney like years later. So yeah, and how do you get so creative without those amazing bandmates? Also, with everyone expecting you to still be, the greatest songwriter and the amazing musician you are known for. So it's
I
difficult,
think,
isn't it?
yeah, it is. And I think when you look at, I mean, you could arguably let's take, and I think we should actually do this soon.
Mm,
You're due to send me a few more albums soon. So what I'm going to
right.
do is I'm going to stick in Imagine and what's the famous George Harrison one?
All things must
That
pass.
one. I'm going to put them in. I will get them done over the next few months, all right? Because I think it's good to do one of each of them. If you compare these three albums, Band on the Run, All Things Must Pass, and Imagine, individually, they have gone down in the rock history books for being fantastic albums.
Yeah.
And they are fantastic albums, like undoubtedly. But each album has moments where you go, do you know what? I could have done with a bit of John here. or
Yeah,
I could have had a George Harrison solo here,
yeah,
or oh god, this verse would be perfect with a bit of a Paul McCartney bass line. And I think that is a curse that will, well, I say will, as in this, if it's in the future, that has lingered on the likes of Paul
yeah,
and George and John up until his death for their lifetimes.
yeah. I think.
Because we've said it before, we said it when we did Rubber Soul, and don't worry, listeners, there will be plenty more Beatles albums coming up before this show ever ends. But it's undoubted that what made them so good was all four of them putting their ideas into the ring, throwing their ideas in. And like you said, even if it's Ringo saying A Hard Day's Night or 8 Days a Week or whatever it was, even just that can make a song. And to have four incredible, okay, let's say two incredible songwriters with two excellent musicians and bandmates around them,
Yeah,
having that entity broken apart and each of those four people being on their own, whilst all these albums, imagine All Things Must Pass, that Band on the Run, whilst they are incredible albums, I feel they're all just missing one little bit that the other Beatles could have put
but
in. Well, what do you think about that?
yeah, I agree with you on that
So
note.
I know
But
we have to take the albums for what they are,
yeah,
and
but
that's why I'm saying individually they are brilliant.
do you
But when
remember
you
when?
compare it to the Beatles, you're just like, there's just that 1% missing.
But you remember when we were talking about bands that changed the lead singer, like when Ronnie James Dio joined Black Sabbath, and people say, "Oh,
Yes.
he's not Ozzy." Well, if you consider that as a different band under the same sort of genre, or it's like they're using the brand, but
Mm,
they are a different entity. If you just take it from there, it's much easier to enjoy something instead of comparing,
great
or you
point.
can compare to something else, to
Mm.
another band. So how many people at that time could write a collection of songs as good as the ones in Band on the Run?
On
If
their own.
Yes, if the
Yeah.
Beatles existed as an entity and Paul McCartney did the album on the side, everyone would say, well, maybe it's not like the Beatles. And I think he was uh he wasn't trying to sound like this guy from the Beatles. I think in this album, and he had
Yeah.
his own thing going on there. And I think like the song, well, to start with, the song Band on the Run is quite unpredictable, and at the same time is a hit, isn't it? Like it's not a song that you would think, well, I know where the song is going now. It's
I used to hear the last part. So it's split into three sections, isn't it? That
Yeah,
song. I used to
it's
hear that
three
last
parts.
part, and I used to be like, "Oh, this is what band. Great, I'll go check it out." And then when I first clicked play on Band on the Run, I was like, "Wait, this isn't the song I heard." But it
Yeah, and
is. It
it's
just changes,
and,
doesn't it?
and it changes in a way that like the first, well, out of three parts, part one is one verse, part two is one verse, and then
Yeah,
halfway through the song it changes and becomes something completely
yeah.
different.
It's
Yeah,
almost a little progressive, that song, isn't it? Especially
it
for the early
is. And
70s.
yeah, and he kind of flirts with the idea of a concept album, right? He didn't want to do
Well,
it.
yeah, this is
Yeah,
a discussion point, isn't it? Because it's not an out and out concept album, is it? Like
no, it's not.
I don't know, like The Wall or something. But there are similar themes running through the whole album,
Yeah.
especially talking of escape, liberation, resilience, exploring freedom and stuff. Did you want to talk a bit about that? Any
Yeah,
lyrics that
yeah.
stand
So
out
yeah,
to you?
so the Band on the Run are this bunch of people escaping from prison. That's what it is. That's what the album cover reflects. And and I have some interesting stories about the album cover as well.
Great.
The so the idea of like a man who is in jail, uh, wanting to get out of it, and he managed to get out with his mates, and they all escape. And it's a kind of like it's kind of a happy ending with that, because like they escaped and no one can find them. The police don't they can't find them, and the judge can't find them. They just escaped. They wanted to escape. They escaped. They're happy. If they are the heroes, which they're not, right? But theoretically they would be criminals. But anyway,
Yeah.
so they escape, and they've managed to to get to a better place, whatever, and they free. So I think that has to do with the initial conversation that George Harrison had with Paul. Like, you know what, I'm bored with this like business stuff. I just want to be a musician, kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think what that means for Paul, probably, I don't know if he ever said that, but it's like he wanted to be free from this curse of being, a former Beatle. It's
Yeah.
like, this is my band, this is my music. You know, he just wanted to keep going. He said, like, he couldn't see himself doing anything else rather than music. I was recently watching an interview with him from 1999, which I'm going to mention again later in the show. When he was saying, like, oh, it's like, imagine when you made redundant and you feel like, oh, it's there, you know, maybe just go there, find another job. And he was like, yeah, I had the best job in the world, and then out of the blue, I don't have it anymore. And so the best job in the world, you're a
Yeah.
Beatle. That's your
Being a
job.
Beatle. Yeah.
And then what do you do after that? So you don't just go and find another job. You need to create something from scratch and make it as good as possible. So I think there is that sense of freedom. Like, I can write my own stuff without the other guys. I can do an album that is really good as a commercial success. And it was, wasn't it? Like, I think it was the best-selling solo album by any Beatle until that point in time, or
Well, yeah,
maybe
6 million
still to this day.
copies sold overall. It was
Yeah,
the top selling studio album in the UK in 1974.
right.
Topped the charts in several countries: USA, UK, Spain, Australia, Canada, Norway. Big success.
Yeah, big hit.
Yeah.
And well deserved, you know.
For sure. Just talking about the concept, I made some notes on what each song,
Yeah,
how the lyrics of each song contribute to the concept. So, as you said, Band on the Run is breaking free from the constraints, embarking on a journey, escaping the authorities, seeking a bit of freedom. Jet is about leaving behind the past troubles and seeking a new start. Bluebird and No Word is like the themes of longing and introspection with it, just longing to
yeah,
be free, longing to have something greater than, just what was. Let Me Roll It and 1985, the urgency and the determination and the desire and the passion to break free and to to escape the grasps of whatever sort of authoritative figure is over you. Maybe it was the record label. The songs can stand alone with each other, can't they? Sorry, songs can stand alone on their own. You can listen to a
yeah.
song and you can take its lyrical themes and you can sort of extrapolate different meanings from each song, but you still bring them together, and the concept is still loosely there, isn't it? Sort of breaking free, embracing the unknown. Just yeah,
And it's a very simple concept when you think about it. Like,
yeah,
freedom,
yeah,
freedom can mean
and vague,
yeah, so many
isn't it?
different things for different people, right? And I think the fact there's this kind of loose approach to a concept
Yeah.
made it easier for him to write lyrics, because Paul is famous for writing melodies first, so melodies and chord progressions, and then he would fit the lyrics. He would just sing whatever, and then replace the lyrics for something that makes sense or
Mm-hmm.
not,
Yep.
because he's not afraid to admit that most of the lyrics in this album um, they don't actually mean a thing. He couldn't. He said it pretty much couldn't explain what Jet is all about.
But when you're pushed into that pressure
Yeah,
and you just write whatever's at the front of your mind, it tells
yeah.
us a lot about what
If
was at the front of his mind.
Yeah, but isn't it like when you're writing a riff or a piano melody, whatever you're writing musically, is about different sounds that work fine together. So
Mm,
why couldn't you do that with words? Like he said, there was no point to say the word suffragette in the song Jet,
yeah.
apart from the point there it rhymes and it sounds good. So who is the lady suffragette? What does she have to do with the story? There's no story. So
Yeah.
who is she? Who is who are the characters? Who is Jet? Like, or is it a jet? Like, it's none of it makes any sense, and it's
I,
not intended to make
I
sense.
think that's why people are calling it a loose concept album.
Yeah,
It's not telling a story definitively, but it's just encapsulating some themes and
yeah,
ideas, isn't it?
and the fact that the songs they kind of um, well, at the end of the album you have Jet and you have what's it, Mrs. Vanderbilt. The melodies they come back
They
at
come
the
back in
end.
Picasso's
Yeah,
last words, don't
yeah,
they?
exactly.
I
So
thought
the
that was actually a really clever song,
yeah,
because first of all, the orchestration is brilliant, but it's really ambitious in the sense of taking the characteristics, moments, little melodies from those previous songs
yeah.
and sticking them all in one song. And he's done it really well. It's not cheesy. It's not. It's
No,
not. It's
no.
not bad. It's done really nicely.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like how can an album so well crafted at the same time? How can it be? I don't know. So simple in a certain way, you know. So there's a simplicity in the concept of the album, but
But
there's complexity with arrangements
in the
and
execution,
execution. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
bro,
exactly.
perfect. Yeah, well
Yeah,
done. Yeah, no, a great way of saying it. Um, I've got a question that I want to ask you.
yeah.
Okay, um, is Band on the Run Sergeant Pepper Part Two?
Uh, I would say it's more for me. It's more like Abbey Road Part Two,
I'm really interested to hear you say that because, first of all, Paul wrote most of Sergeant Pepper, didn't he?
and
So
most
that's
of Abbey Road
did
was
he?
there.
Okay, all right, fair enough. But I
I
just
think
felt
so.
that the conceptness, that the fact that there was a concept behind it. Abbey Road doesn't have a concept running through it, does it?
No, no.
Just how the songs blend into each other, the intense use of orchestration, Band on the Run, switching between sections, kind of like A Day in the Life.
Yeah,
I just really heard similarities between Sergeant Pepper. Not heard, I suppose it's more in the structure of it and how some of the songs were structured and how some of them sounded, the order the songs went in, bringing back all those themes at the end in Picasso's last words or whatever it's called. I just
because
really, I was listening to this
yeah,
thinking, this is like Sergeant Pepper. Well, what do you think about
yeah.
that?
Well, as I said, I think it's more like Abbey Road. I'll tell you why. Because Sergeant Pepper's was written as a concept from the beginning, isn't it? And then obviously, you know, John had his contributions in the album, but um, Paul had the whole idea in his mind before the album was a thing, really. And there's the whole thing of like a million overdubs, orchestrations, and the whole psychedelic vibe of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was all thought through. Whilst Abbey Road, there's it's a bunch of different songs that they decided to connect at some points for the sake of sounding good as an album. So
Yeah, you're
at the end
right.
of the album, I have Golden Slumbers, Carry That Weight, and The End. Those are three parts of a song. You know, they're just like, well, here's one long song and I'm going to divide it in three parts.
Hmm.
So I think Band on the Run is more like that than like a proper concept album. So I
That's a
think
great, yeah.
yeah,
That's a
it
good.
makes me yeah.
I was going to say it's a very good answer to that to my question because yeah. So you're saying the way he went about writing the songs and the way that the ideas came to him, although it might have executed in a bit of a Sergeant Pepper sound,
Yeah,
the process in getting there was way more like Abbey Road. Yeah.
I think so.
Good
That's
point. Good point.
my view then.
Anything you want to talk about? Do you want to go into the songs? Is there another sort of category you want to talk about?
Yeah, well, I think yeah, there's a lot of let me see if there's you know I'm a pro. I've got like handwritten notes. See, I'm not copying from any
Handwritten.
yeah,
Oh
see,
boy.
what a professional man. I'll just check. I'm gonna go through my notes to see if there's um yeah, well as I said, I think there's oh yeah, another thing about the fact they recorded in Nigeria. When they came back to England, they found a letter from the label.
From who?
From the label, from
Okay.
the record label, they actually arrived a bit too late. So when they got back, there was a let's say, don't go to Nigeria. There's an epidemic going on, and it's
Yeah, the
that was
cholera.
yeah the
Cholera. Yeah.
cholera yeah, and that was their main concern more than the military situation, whatever. Is the fact that they could literally contract a disease and die, and, and the fact that they only got the letter when they got back home, I think just makes the story even more
You'd
interesting.
open it and you'd be like,
Yeah,
shit.
whatever. Also, okay, here's the thing: Ginger Baker was there because he African music was his main interest, and he mixed African music with jazz and rock, as we know. And I think some of the stuff was recorded in his studio. He tried to convince them
I
to
think
come
it
and do
was
some stuff.
I think it was Picasso's last words. I think that
Yeah,
song because he was there and he just shook a matchbox or something.
exactly. Do you know what he actually played? And
No.
it's only the outro. I think it was kind of a joke just to put his name on the album. So Ginger
Okay.
Baker participated on this, and people would comment about it. You know,
What
it
was
doesn't
it?
play drums in it. It was a tin can filled with gravel. That was it. It's like
Passion.
percussion, and it's like that's it. He's just shaking that thing at the
Yeah.
last few bars of the song.
Wow.
And so people say, oh, Ginger Baker is in this track with Paul McCartney. He doesn't do much. It's just
Brilliant.
I bet that was just a joke.
Yeah. Um, one thing I want to talk about is the diverse sound of the album. Because what we love, or I think what I love about the Beatles is how good they are with just four instruments.
Yeah.
And I know that
Oh,
that's
there's
that's not
more.
fair. There is more. There's George Martin's orchestra. There's keyboards in certain albums. So do you know what? I'll take that back. But what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that Paul McCartney's songwriting, the quality is on display in this album. And I think he wasn't afraid to go for the unorthodox sounds. Like there's so much saxophone on this album. Can't recall hearing a saxophone do a solo on a Beatles album.
Yeah, no.
Um,
It would sax solos in pop songs would be really big in the 80s, isn't it? But
yeah, and
maybe
it's
not at that time.
probably bands like Wings and the band as well that started introducing the saxophone into the pop music in the 70s. But I thought the emphasis on keyboards on this album as well had a really profound effect because that now when I asked you the question, how as a Beatle do you make an album after the Beatles? I think that's what you do. You try something really different. I don't think the Beatles would ever have gone for a sound like that. Even just the intro, Band on the Run,
Yeah.
like even just that. I mean, there's loads more sort of keyboard effects and sounds on the rest of the album, but that's the one that sticks out. But he's tried something, and I think it's paid off. I think
Yeah.
you've got pop music, essentially pop and rock music, with unusual saxophone and unusual keyboard sounds, but they
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. And also like people knew Paul McCartney as a bassist most of all, right?
Yeah,
In terms of what instruments he's playing most of the time would be the bass and the piano sometimes. But he does all the lead guitars in the album. So
yeah,
some of the rhythm guitars is not him, but most of the lead guitars are played by him.
yeah.
And it's just like, he proved he is a great musician and he can play any instrument to um, really high standards. And so you wouldn't say there's a solo that wasn't that good or the riff
No,
wasn't
no,
that
they're
clever.
yeah.
It's all
It's all
well
brilliant,
crafted.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's give some credit to the musicians. Actually, I got the band here. So obviously on well, this is crazy. On vocals, bass, guitars, piano, keys, drums, and percussion, you got Paul McCartney. On backing vocals, organ, keyboards, and percussion, you got Linda McCartney. On backing vocals, guitars, and percussion, you've got Denny Lane, who, as you mentioned, was the ex Moody Blues guitarist. And then just some extra musicians. So Howie Casey played saxophone on Jet, Bluebird, and Mrs. Vanderbilt. Ginger Baker played percussion on Picasso's Last Words. Remy Kabaka played percussion on Bluebird. Ian Holm and Trevor Jones, the Wings roadies, they did backing vocals on No Words, and Tony Visconti did the orchestration. So quite a small group, quite a tight knit group for an
Yeah,
album that
yeah.
sounds so big. And what was the album we were talking about recently, where they just had hundreds of musicians on?
Was it the Beach Boys? Uh,
Yeah, I think you're
yeah,
right. Yeah,
because they
Beach
don't
Boys.
even
Well done,
play
good
their
memory.
instruments in the album.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
bad sound.
Um,
So they had session musicians to do their own parts, like,
yeah,
um,
exactly. Yet to an
and it's a normal
extent,
thing, when you want to do something more complex and you just like have your hired guns
mm.
for the difficult stuff.
But this
And
album sounds as big, but with
yeah, well, they
half,
only use
maybe a
musicians
quarter
for
of the musicians.
yeah, exactly. But most of it, like the core of the album, is done by three people only.
Yeah, and it's
And
very
that's
impressive,
quite
isn't it? I
impressive.
think
Yeah.
the unique sound, the bass sound they have is very, very good.
What do you think of the bass lines in the album as a bassist? What do you think of it?
Um,
He's not
it's
trying
Paul
to do the same
McCartney.
Beatles stuff, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. So I was going to say it's Paul
Yeah,
McCartney, so of course it's good. But with the Beatles stuff, there's a profound emphasis on melody in the
yeah,
Beatles bass playing, and I think that's because in a band that's full of melodies, whether it's George Harrison's guitar, John Lennon's vocal melody, or Paul's backing vocal melody, at the time, bass guitar was used, and we spoke about this with The Who, actually, wasn't it? One of the
yeah,
recent episodes. At the time, bass guitar was used to reinforce the root note of the chord and to be a marriage between the chord you're playing. So play a note that's in the chord that the guitar's playing, but also do something rhythmically that links it to the drums. Um, And Paul McCartney was one of those sort of pioneering bass players in the pop music, just stepping out of it. And that's why his Beatles bass lines were so iconic. But here, it's almost as if he's kind of taken a step back. They're great bass lines, but they're not. I'm not saying they're not as good as the Beatles ones, but they're just not as pronounced. They're not doing as much.
Yeah.
But I think
Maybe
they're
it's what
great.
happens when you have to do the whole of the album.
You
You
kind of,
start, yeah.
as I always
From
say,
just
less is
thinking
more.
about the guitars, maybe
Yeah,
maybe he found himself as the lead guitarist and lead singer more than anything else, and
and he kept
by
turning around,
accident.
and he kept
Yeah.
turning around saying, "Shut up, bass player." Oh, it's me.
Oh, yes, me. Yeah, you can't complain about the
Yeah,
bassist when you're the bassist.
exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, so I just want to mention a couple. If we can quickly talk about some specifics of the
yeah, of
songs.
course, no rush.
Yeah,
Let's
the
do it.
song. Yeah, the song "Band on the Run," the first of the opening track. I think. Do you know what I had in my mind that that song was about 10 minutes long?
Okay,
Because
you
do
mean
you know
from when
what
you
I?
last listened?
Yeah, I was like, no, it's actually shorter. It's like
Yeah,
5 minutes, 5.5 or
five
something.
minutes, 12. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was longer because the fact that the first two sections of it are completely different, and they go on so quickly, they're so short, that gives the song a really fast pace. Because
Mm.
once you get used to a certain melody and chord progression, he goes and changes it like
Yeah,
out of the blue. It's
yeah.
like, where are we going now?
But
And it,
it's
yeah,
fantastically transitioned between those
yeah.
sections in the song. It's done
Oh, it's
really
beautiful.
well. Yeah,
It's probably the
very Sergeant Pepper-esque, if I may
yeah,
add.
more guitar based though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's more like it's more rock
Hmm.
than. I think that's what makes it different. Is maybe is really into the 70s where
Mm.
guitar was the main thing.
Well,
Uh,
just take a look at the next song, Jet. How you got
Jet.
that? Yeah, I don't know if I've got in my notes distorted bass, which I
Yeah.
think it might be. If it's not, it's just a really heavily affected guitar. But that song, that's rock, isn't it?
It's still one of the songs he plays. Those two songs he still plays live.
Does he
And
really?
yeah.
Wow.
I saw him
Um,
playing those songs live, and but they play it so heavy.
really?
Yeah, you got to check it out.
Wow. We'll
Yeah,
find
anything
one.
is done
Yeah, yeah.
after from 2000 to now. Any versions of those songs are much heavier than the originals, and they
Brilliant.
sound great. And yeah, with Jet, you have this kind of back and forth between a halftime and double.
Mm,
It's like a double tempo kind of groove, isn't it?
yeah,
Because it does. It's not speeding up and slowing down. It's like it goes. You double the feel of the groove, and then you go half time again.
yeah.
He does that like all the time in the song, and it's it feel like they dragging you with them, like it's like you're part of it. Come on, join us, and
Yeah.
let's speed up, let's slow down.
And you're there
Back,
tapping your
yeah,
head like that.
exactly. There's no way to not physically react to Jet, I believe. Yeah.
That's correct. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, last thing about Band on the Run, I think
Oh,
my
sorry. Yeah,
favorite
go on.
part of lyrics is right. I think at the second verse, I guess. If I ever get out of here, thought of giving it all away to a registered charity. All I need is a pint a day. I find that's like, yeah, I'm gonna get out of prison. All the money I stole or whatever, I'm gonna give it all away. I just need a pint.
Oh,
Like this is
quite a
yeah.
humble lyric.
Well,
Yeah.
quite a humble criminal, the character, isn't it? Yeah. So it's yeah. But again, that song is probably the one that the lyrics make more sense, and then Jet, you go into the nonsense in a good
Yeah.
way, and I love it. It's great.
I really enjoyed Mrs. Vanderbilt. I
Mm.
thought that was good. Nice upbeat energy, really cool transitions. Really, yeah. And the chord progression I really enjoyed as well. You got the nice prominent bass, the funky guitar lines, the horns that kind of liven it up a bit. That was one of my favorites, I have to
I
say.
think that's the only song that the bass actually leads the song, isn't it?
Very prominent
Yeah,
in it. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and what a chorus, right?
Oh, yeah,
Ho hey
yeah,
ho!
really.
You don't need lyrics.
Yeah. Hey, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For anyone watching and listening, as usual, the playlist, the episode playlist will be in the show notes below. So if you want to go along and listen to the album, actually, we haven't mentioned any other songs, but normally, if we mention any other songs as well as the album, they'll all be in the playlist, so you can listen to before or during your time with us. What's your favorite song?
Oh, difficult one. Um, I think I think the best song is Band on the Run, but my
Okay,
personal favorite might surprise you. Let Me Roll It. So
That has surprised me.
you
Yeah.
don't like that
No, no,
one.
no, no. I don't mind it actually. I've
Okay.
actually got written grew on me the more I listened to it. I just didn't expect it to be yours.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of has that very soul-y feel. It's almost a bit psychedelic as well,
It's
isn't it?
it yeah, but it's a 12/8 or 6/8 if you're counting into groove. And it's what I teach my students. That's why every time, those young drummers, they want to learn how to play a slow blues.
This is
This
the
song
song.
comes to my mind because the mix is so clear, you can hear the drums. And I find amazing, like the bass line of the song is so clever. There's almost nothing during the verse, and then it tells the whole story during the chorus. And there's that main riff. So the guitar comes out of nowhere, plays this fast riff, but really short, and stops. And I love that. I think it's,
Yeah.
it's so creative, so different. And again, lyrics are just very simple, and yeah, it's a beautiful melody. And I don't know why. I think I watched it. I think it was the first song from this album that I've listened to, maybe watching a live DVD from Paul, or VHS, I would say.
Yeah.
And I loved it. And it's my favorite. Yeah.
Oh, lovely. The
What's
song,
your favorite?
well, I think my favorite is Band on the Run. I really
Right.
enjoy that song. I think it's lovely, and the way that it moves seamlessly between those sections is great. But what I will tell you is the song that I really disliked at the start. Do you know what? Why don't I just give my opinion? Because you
Yeah.
asked me before. This album has grown on me the more I listen to it, to the point where I listened to it first time and I was like, I don't really like this. This feels a bit flat to me. I wasn't connecting with it, and I'm not sure why. But then I sort of said, this is what I do for you listeners and viewers. I power through. I listen to albums I don't like yet. Joking. And the more I listen to it, because we do have to do our research, do have to listen to the songs more than once. The more I listened to it, the more it grew on me. Especially the song that I really disliked at the start was Mamunia, and then by the end, it's probably a top three for me. I think these
Yeah.
songs grow on you. I think they are songs like Bluebird, Roll With It, Mamunia, Picasso's Last Words. I think
Roll with it. You just put an Oasis song in a Paul McCartney album. No, it's not.
Let Me
It's Let
Roll
Me
It.
Roll It.
Sorry. So
See.
songs like Bluebird, Let
Okay.
Me Roll It, Mamunia, Picasso's Last Words. I think they're quite how do I say this politely? I think with until you listen to them multiple times and extrapolate the layers, I think they're quite, I'm going to use the word dull, but I don't mean it as harsh as it sounds. They're
Yeah.
quite, do you know what I mean? There's nothing, the way that Band on the Run, you've got one section, then oh my god, we've gone to another section. Oh my god, now we've gone to another one. Those songs don't really have that journey it takes me on, or the level of
Yeah.
excitement. But as you dig and listen deeper into it, you figure out what the song's about. Like in Mamunia, there's so many exotic percussion instruments in there,
Yeah.
stuff that you wouldn't expect to hear. I already spoke about Picasso's Last Words.
Yeah, Picasso's
What was the
last
other one?
words. Actually,
Bluebird.
apparently, those were the actual last words Picasso said.
Drink to me.
Yeah, yeah. Drink to me, because I can't drink anymore. Or drink
Oh,
to me, drink to my
bless.
health, something like that. Because I
But
can't drink anymore.
I just and as I listen to each song, I just have to say straight away, 1985, not for me. I'll just say that straight away. I didn't enjoy that one. But
So
No
you guys just
Words,
skip that song because Lars doesn't like it.
yeah, exactly. But No Words, Mrs. Vanderbilt, and Band on the Run. Really enjoy the energy. Really love how the instruments are working with each other, and each one is just perfectly doing enough.
Right.
Nothing needs to be done more than the others. And then those other four, Bluebird, Roll It, Mamunia, and Picasso, the more I listen to them, the more they grow on me.
Right. The question for you: the version of the album you listen to, does he have Helen Wheels?
Mine doesn't. I haven't listened to
Yeah.
that, but I
Oh,
read
you
that.
got to go and listen to that then, because it's
Oh,
on some. You got. It's really hard to find actually. That's on the there's a long version of this album on Spotify with some like uh some version with less overdubs and extra songs and stuff. And you're gonna find a song called
right.
Hailing Wheels, which is not technically part of the album initially. I think it wasn't part of the album at all in the UK, I think, and then it was released in America. Got to double check that. But this song
Oh, I've
is,
just found it. Yeah, so for listeners and
yeah.
watchers, I'll put this one in the playlist as well.
Well, as you're listening
Sorry,
to it now,
Felipe.
let's do a Lars reacts to. So, What do you
You want
think
me
of it?
to? Okay.
It's an early, it's like an early rock and roll song, isn't it?
Sure. All right. Well, listeners, legally we can't play it out loud, but you can get my reaction to it. I'll sort of play through it. Oh yeah, that's proper rock and roll. It's almost like
Rock and roll, man.
AC/DC,
It's like,
Zeppelin. Yeah.
yeah, but no, there's a vibe. There's a vibe to it. There's kind
Mm.
of early
I'm gonna
stuff
skip
as well,
through it,
like
so
Chuck
it's not
Berry, you know.
full 3 minutes. But oh my god, man, this is like a rock and roll throwback. Like when you hear the Beatles doing those
Yeah,
rock and roll covers.
so have a listen to it when you have the time, because that song has a story to it. There's actually that those lyrics, they actually make
You
sense.
you carry on. I'm listening. This
Yeah,
is great.
because this the song is about the journey they would do from McCartney's farm in Scotland all the way to London. So they describe the journey, the road, and they were doing in a Land Rover called Helen. So their car was called Helen, and and it's just a joke with the expression "hell on wheels." So that's
Helen.
what it.
Okay,
Yeah.
very
So
good.
that's
Very
it.
good.
So that's a real story. That's them traveling down the UK all the way from Scotland to London,
Very good.
and it's a journey that apparently they did a million times. You know?
That was really good. Again, I
Yeah.
was sort of skipping
And
every
that's
30
so sorry about
seconds.
that. It's like that song was a single, and like they had this known album singles at the time, right? So you release a single, it's not part of the album. But what happened with the album is when it was first released, it didn't actually get much attention from the public and the critics. So it
What, Band
was,
on the Run?
yes,
Oh,
it
really?
was kind of about to become another failure commercially for Paul. And they then released Band on the Run and Jet as singles, and the album sales went through the roof.
Yeah.
And well,
Yeah.
expected, right? Because they're great songs. And then they released this known album single, Helen Wheels. And then later on, the label decided to put in the album. But I don't know which country doesn't include it. I think it
Well,
didn't make it to the album in the UK or something.
anyway, it's a great song.
It's a
Like I
great
said, I
song,
just
yeah.
listened to it quickly. I skipped every 30 seconds,
And
so that I
it
wasn't here.
does.
But
It
it
normally
was
comes as track 8 in the
okay.
album.
Well, that's a good placement because I think at that point in the album, it needed a little pick me up after
Yeah,
the sort of slowness of Let Me Roll It and Mamunia. That was a great tune. I really enjoyed that.
yeah,
Helen Wheels again for what I heard. I'm gutted that I didn't hear it first time now. I think it's actually made the album just a little bit better. A
yeah,
nice little rock and roll throwback that
yeah,
isn't quite in. I feel like this with the Beatles, a lot of the albums, although you might have like a profound meaning in the album overall, there might be just be one song that's just a little throwaway song, like What Goes On,
yeah,
one of
yeah,
those
yeah.
ones.
Exactly.
And
What is the
that
song doing
yeah,
there? But they're just
yeah,
great.
but that was
Yeah,
great. Yeah, really enjoyed that one.
yeah.
Excellent. I mean, do you have anything else you want to talk
Yes,
about?
I have something really interesting to mention.
Let's go.
Really, really, really interesting. It's my favorite story about the album, and it's
Okay.
about the album cover. So Lars has, if you're watching this, you can see if you're just listening. Lars got as his background has got a the album cover, which is the
I
Prisoners, right?
check
The
out here.
band on the run. The Prisoners, when the prison lights catch them, they try to escape. The lights on them. So so
There
basically,
you go.
there you go. So Linda, Paul, and what's the name? Danny Lane. They are there, and they wanted. It's
Let me
meant to
slide
be a
across
band, a
and
bunch of
point out.
people.
So for
Uh,
those watching, you can see
yeah,
on my screen.
yeah.
There you go.
Now, right. So who are those people, right? And and that's what I said. I've mentioned to Lars before we started recording. If he knew about the connection album
Oh,
and Lord of the Rings,
I can
there.
see it now.
So yeah, so here's you can see him. Can you see
Yeah,
him?
Christopher
Yeah,
Lee, isn't it?
Christopher Lee is
Yes.
there. At the time, he was So he
Brilliant.
was what's his character in the movie? Because I'd never watched it. So
Saruman the
Saruman,
White.
yeah.
Yeah.
So at the time, he was doing horror movies.
But yeah, I was
I
just going to say
think,
that's a
yeah,
disservice to Christopher Lee that we're only mentioning Lord of the Rings. He's been in everything.
yeah, yeah.
He was Dracula. He was in Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and
I
even
just
during the
said Lord of
war.
the I just
Oh, you
said
did, yeah.
Lord of the Rings
And
because I know you're a big fan.
even in the war, he was a Nazi hunter.
Oh,
He was part
wow.
of a special ops unit that just was dedicated to hunting Nazis.
Wow.
So this guy's had a life. But anyway, this is not the
Yeah, anyway,
Christopher
so
Lee
yeah,
podcast.
so the whole thing is they had I think Linda came up with the idea, and some people think, wow, they organized. So they all British celebrities. I think they're all British, and they're all friends with both. The idea was like, I need a few people to be in the album cover to
Do you know
take
who they
pictures.
are?
You can Google and find. I have it here, but I will tell you the most important ones. The
Let
two
me
that
turn
I
my
think
camera off.
the
So
two
for
that I
viewers, there you go.
knew, to be fair, is Christopher Lee and Michael Parkinson, who is a host of a famous TV show
And
in
that's
the UK.
Parkinson on the left, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. His show is great. I mean, he interviewed every famous person you can possibly think of. And he died recently, wasn't it?
Yes,
Um,
he did. Yeah, not
yeah,
too
so
long
the
ago.
other guy, so I have it here. So apart from
Oh,
the band, you have comedian and singer Kenny Lynch, which I don't know, Hollywood film star James Coburn, I don't know how to pronounce his name, a former Liberal MP, Clement Freud, I guess, and Christopher Lee, and a boxer called John Conte. So they all, I think, from the UK. And the thing is, Paul knew those people, and when you think about it, oh, so he just like thought about, I want these particular faces in the album cover, like a Sergeant Pepper's
yeah, yeah,
with
yeah.
loads of well-known faces. And no, he just basically said, well, those are famous people that I knew and that I had their numbers, and they were available at that specific day. So they got together on the night before. Paul threw a party for them, and everyone got drunk and allegedly used other substances as well. And they turned up for the photo shoot in such a state that they couldn't stand up for more than 3 seconds. And the photographer wanted them to stand still because he brought, that's funny, the wrong film for the camera. He brought a daylight film for a night shoot. So he said
Oh,
it's not going to work, and the lights were not only that, the lights were not the lights he wanted. They're not strong enough, so the lights wouldn't be that evident if they were moved. Basically, he needed to do loads of shots with them standing still, and they couldn't stand still, so they're leaning against that wall and kind of kind of holding on to each other so they wouldn't fall because they were too hangover or whatever. So that's
God.
yeah. So all those famous people completely smashed, and so the fact that the camera film was the wrong one gave the photo that yellowish kind of tone that makes
Okay.
it really special. So that
Yeah.
was accidental.
Fantastic. What a
Yeah,
story. That's
beautiful
brilliant.
story. It's
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
I suppose so. Should we finish now?
That's it from
Yeah, we're
me.
done. I like looking at the critical view of this album. You
Yeah,
know, reviewers, they praised the songwriting, the production, the musicality. It was awarded the Grammy for the best engineered album 1975. So again, that's
yeah,
a testament to the production of the album. Q have it 75th out of 100 best British albums ever. Rolling Stone, in their revised list, which is different to the one however many 20 years ago, have it at 418th out of 500. And in 2013, it was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame.
nice.
Um, I don't have a monologue for this
You
one,
don't have a monologue.
but I can do one.
Improvise it right
I'll
now.
improvise it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I kind of did the quiz instead,
You've
but
played jazz before, haven't you? So,
of course, with you in the jazz trio.
yeah.
So yeah, I'll do an improvised monologue. So my thinking is that having come from I wouldn't say he's lost his musical credibility, but the critics were not favourable of his albums before this, and I think it's very hard as an artist to build yourself back up after you've been essentially shot down by the critics and even the audiences as well. But to have that on your plate and have two band members quit before 6 weeks recording, and to go to a place that you wanted to relax and thought it was going to be paradise, only to find out it's actually a really dangerous place to be in, and being robbed at knife point with your wife and losing your demos and your lyrics. I think Paul McCartney has pulled this album out of the bag. The production on it is incredible. And whilst a lot of Beatles stuff sounds like there's four guys in a room, again, we know that the Beatles were great on production, but still, they were limited by their time, as in by the year they were operating on. I think Paul McCartney's done an incredible job of making this album sound modern and fresh. Like I said like I said earlier, that intro part of Band on the Run still sounds magnificent. And for three people to have made this album, and I think it's a very interesting dynamic that Paul and Linda McCartney were married, because essentially that's a married couple and another person. And I think it's quite a special achievement for essentially half of a band and 2/3 of that half being married to have produced something so special and so good. Now, it's far from my favorite album, including Beatles albums and Beatles solo albums, but there are lots of standout tracks here that I think are really special, like Band on the Run, Picasso's Last Words, Mrs. Vanderbilt I loved, but then in amongst that, you've got those calmer songs like Let Me Roll It, Mamounia, that really just sit with you. And the more that you take it in and the more you listen, the more you extrapolate from it. I think that this album is responsible for Paul McCartney getting back on the throne that people once thought he was at. And then they said, oh, well, his last albums haven't been good. I think he's done an incredible job to get back and prove to us just how fantastic he is as a songwriter and a musician.
Agreed.
Was that okay for an improvised monologue?
That was actually almost as good as the ones you wrote down.
Oh, brilliant,
beforehand.
brilliant. Maybe I'll have to improvise some from now on.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, I mean, it is a great album, and just because it's not my favorite. Listen, objectively, I can't disservice this. I can't call it less than an 8 out of 10. It's brilliant.
But no one can please this man. Just say.
Hold on.
Would have an objection to everything.
I like to be fair. If I like to be fair, I like to speak my mind, I like to be honest. And if something doesn't sit with me, that's just my opinion.
The best thing I've heard about Lars is if you give him a paintbrush and the Mona Lisa, he would say, yeah, I think I could change this and that. That would make it look slightly better.
Was that one of your friends in Brazil who said that?
No, it wasn't one of my friends in the UK
who
said that. Yeah, because you mentioned something about the ending of Stereo to Heaven could have been. Yeah. And so yeah, so it could have been a better album for Last.
No. I don't know if I don't.
I'm just taking the piss.
I don't know. I know, but I don't know how I change it. I think it's just little things matter for me in songs. Like sometimes the key of a song, and I'm so pedantic, I'm so weird, whatever. Sometimes the key of a song doesn't sit with me. Sometimes the mood of a song, and it's just listen. I'm just wasting time now. It's a great album. There are some great songs on it. Not my favorite that we've ever done, but yeah. Why don't we end? I'll end by asking you, what makes this album rock and roll?
Oh, wow. Well, we keep saying it's freedom, and it's a journey from captivity to freedom, isn't it? That's the story. The main storyline is someone trying to break free from a prison, but it could be anyone just wanting to be free from anything, and that's rock and roll. And the fact that it's got so many different approaches, like African percussion, and then early rock and roll, and then a bit of prog, like Band on the Run for me has a bit of prog, and it's like there's no limits in terms of styles or I don't know, arrangements. And I think that's what makes it rock and roll is and I think to be honest, what makes it rock and roll is you stuck in the middle of nowhere with political instability, diseases, and someone robbing your lyrics and
you still keep the whole and you still keep a cool head and record a brilliant album.
Just go there and play. That's rock and roll. Let's just do the best we can do with the tools we have at the moment. So that's what it is. I
know I said last one, but one more question: is this Paul's best work outside of the Beatles?
My favorite for sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of people agree with that, and it's the best I've heard as well. But yeah, brilliant stuff. Cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. As we usually say, follow us on socials, get involved in some conversations, hit like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, scroll down a bit and give us a review. It really helps us fly up the charts and be seen by other people. And also helps you stay up to date with the new content coming out. If you like us on Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff, and you'll be up to date. So thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, and let us know if you have any suggestions of albums or stuff.
Yep.
We might consider them.
We definitely will, yeah.
yeah. Thanks for being with us again. Keep on rocking, everyone. And don't do anything else.
Nailed it. Yes. And as usual, I'll end there before we tell any more stories of your phrases. And as usual, take care, guys, and long live rock and roll.